Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. So let's go ahead and jump into accounting here. So, a church will, like any employer, doesn't have to be a church per se, but from time to time, they'll need to lend money or choose to lend money to either an employee or to somebody with the expectation that that money will then be paid back. And we do want to record that on our books in accounting. Okay, so we know that we, one, have spent the money, or the money's now no longer sitting in our checking account. It's not in our funds available to use for something else. And then we do want to be able to record the repayment process or repayment transactions as they occur when that, when that person is repaying the church, whether it's in one lump sum payment or several payments over a particular period of time. So there are two sections of this document. When principal is paid back, basically there's no interest that's being assessed or charged on the loan. It's an interest-free loan. And then the second part down at the bottom and on page 2 is when the interest is, when interest as well as principal is being repaid. So at the very top, when it talks about when principal only is being paid back, we want to set up two accounts. And so what it talks about is going into manage accounts and assets, and it's talking about manage accounts up here, accounts plus minus, and assets. And we see our current list of assets down at the bottom. We're going to add a new one here, and it's going to be called, asset, say, I'm going to amend it a little bit. I'm going to call it asset loan receivable. If I could type today, let me capitalize my R here. Did I get that right? I did. We're going to tab down, and we're going to number this 1.70.100. We're going to put it under our total current assets and investments. And we're going to click Add Account. So there's our asset account without closing the window or flipping the screen. We're going to go right up to the top and click on Fund. Same thing right here. We're going to call this Fund. I could type again, loan receivable. And we're going to do a similar number, adding the word balance to it, tabbing down. We're going to make this one 3,700,100. I think we only have total fund balances. We do. And same thing, we're going to click Add Account. Okay, so we've established the two necessary accounts that are required for when we're issuing the loan and repaying it, where no interest is involved. So how to establish the loan, the second, the first bullet under the second section down there is if the loan already exists and your beginning balances have not been finalized, then you can certainly edit the beginning balances of both the asset and the fund to reflect the amount or to show the amount of that loan. But that's most likely not what most of you are dealing with here, okay? Most of you have your beginning balances are already finalized way back when the church set up the chart of accounts for the very first time. So we have to get those transactions entered in the software, and many times we will have to then write a check for that. So how we do that is so before we do that, we're going to go right here under manage accounts, because let's say we're going to pretend today that we have to issue and print a check for the person who we're issuing or making the loan for. So right down here we see our asset loan receivable. And right over here on the right-hand side on the detail tab, you see the detail tab, long-term inactive, then add the ledger, bank name. So right down here, we're going to make that under our asset receivable. So we're going to make this one, we're going to call this, John Doe. So because that's who our payee is, okay? That's who we're making the check payable to. So I'm now editing that bank name because I need to print a check for John, okay? So now when the loan is established, we have two transactions we need to post. So we're going to go right up here to transactions and right here across the top center to the one with the two little stacks of money and the arrow pointing left to right, the one that says transfer. So right here, we're going to say that we're issuing John the check for this loan today. So we're going to leave it today. So the from account here is going to be our Huntington Bank checking. Choose that. The beauty of the transfers function is, folks, is of course, it forces us to choose accounts of the same type. So once I've chosen that asset checking account, notice here, I have to choose another asset. So right here, I'm going to do my asset loan receivable, and we're going to enter the amount of the loan. So we're going to say he borrowed $1,500 from us. And notice here under our payment method, we can choose computer check. So we're going to choose computer check. Notice no checker number or reference number is required. And we're going to do to establish personal loan. And I'm having real problems with my typing today, folks. Sorry about that. So to establish personal loan, click Done, Add to Batch. If I now go up to Show Running Balance, let me bring that over there here. So we now show that the asset loan receivable had a current balance of 0. It's, the transaction effect is adding $1,500 into that. The adjusted balance will be $1,500. Notice now our Huntington Bank checking has also been reduced by that amount because we are actually writing that check to John. So right here now we're going to do our receivable fund loan receivable. Looks like I spelt that incorrectly. So we choose our fund balance. Sorry, that's the wrong account. We're doing our general fund. So here's our general fund operating fund balance to our loan receivable fund balance. So right here, and again, I'm going to do the same 1,500. Notice no payment method is required. Again, establish personal loan, and Done, Add to Batch. Again, similarly, notice that our loan receivable fund is 0 balance transaction effect and is also showing 1,500. So in this case, folks, once we post these transactions, the money is no longer sitting in either the general fund or my general checking to pay. I've not expensed anything on my treasurer's report because we're going to be getting that money back. You could if you really want to, but you don't have to because we're going to get this money back. Now, whether, whatever the terms are on the repayment, that's entirely up to you and then the person you're lending the money to, So whether, the beauty of this is that if this happens to go longer than a year, so if it goes into, say, 2023, into 23, this asset and this fund will just automatically bring forward whatever remaining balance is still owed on either the asset in the loan in either the asset or the fund. Okay, so this is doing exactly what I want. So I would do post. I'm not going to print the transactions, but again, just by way of a quick reminder, is when I now go to print checks, I now see a check waiting in my print queue now, he said, as it takes its own sweet time opening that. Come on, there it is. So there's my check waiting to print to John Doe. I can print that to physical check stock, send and present that to him so he can then take it to the bank and cash that. Okay, so when now John is repaying me, giving me payments back, whether it's one lump sum or periodic payments, okay, I'm simply going to do 2 transfers the other way around. So I do transactions, transfer, and then, whatever date. So let's say he's now started a repayment process back in, now here in mid-May. So my from account is going to be my receivable asset 100, the 1,700 there to checking. There's my Huntington Bank checking. Let's say he's now given us $200 on this. Again, I'm not going to choose computer check, but if I want to record the payment method that he's presenting to me, I can choose manual check or whatever payment method best suits that. Let's say he presented me with cash. So then I would say, enter comments of some kind, repayment for loan, one payment against loan, done, add to batch. But I have to remember that I have to do my loan from my loan receivable also back to my general fund because that money has now got to go back into the general fund to use for other purposes. Okay, I'm now being repaid by him. Again, entering comments. It's just we've got about 7 minutes, folks, here, 8 minutes, and I want to get through this other one about the interest as well. So same thing when we now click Done Add to Batch. If we again now go up to Show Running Balance, we now notice that the adjusted balance on the right for both the asset and the loan receivable, both the asset and the fund, are now showing an adjusted balance lower of $200. So these types of these transfer transactions from the receivable back to my fund and to my checking account will occur, and once the adjusted balance for the receivable asset and the receivable fund are showing zero, then we know that the loan has been completely repaid. Okay, so that is the crux of those are the transactions that would be required if there's no interest. So if there is interest now, so we're going to go ahead and post this to show that that he's made a partial payment on that. So if there is a loan, an interest that we're now charging this person on this, then there's an additional, we've set up the 100 and the 300 for our fund, but then there's an additional account that we need to set up for income to record the amount of interest that we received. And I've already set that up under my chart of accounts. So when I now come in here, so if I type in loan, here's my loan interest income that I've set up for 10.500 right here, and it's over on the right-hand side. I've linked that to my general operating fund, okay? Because that is where that interest is going to be going into, again, that I can use for other general fund purposes, okay? So there are a couple of different, and again, similarly to establish the loan, as it talks about there at the bottom of the page 1, if the loan already exists and the beginning balances are not finalized, you would again go in and enter the beginning balance in the loan receivable asset and the loan receivable fund to reflect whatever balance you want to have show as outstanding or unpaid principal on that, okay? Otherwise, then you would be doing a journal entry that would debit the asset receivable 100 account and credit the 300 account for whatever the loan principal balance you want, okay? But again, that's assuming then we don't need to print a check to our employee or to our person that we're lending to. If we do need to issue them a check, then you're going to need to do the transfer. But if all we need to do is get the balance in the liability or the asset and the fund, a simple debit to the asset and a credit to the fund will do that for us, okay? So same thing, issuing the asset transfer to issue the loan or the own and print a check to John. So now, when I'm now receiving a payment back from John, I've got some flexibility here, okay? So I can do it in a couple different ways, all right? So the page 2 talks about enter income for the amount of interest. So I could go right here to income, and let's say I would choose my Huntington Bank checking, and right here I would type in my loan interest income, and I would enter whatever the amount of the loan interest is, and I would enter comments of some kind, okay? The drawback to that is this would be 2 transactions that I have to ensure are totaling the amount that shows up on my bank reconciliation, because more than likely John's going to be presenting me with a check or cash that includes both the interest and the principal combined, okay? This way, if I do this as income, it would be one income transaction, and I'd have to make sure that the date occurred was correct, and then my transfer transaction would also have to be dated the same and posting it to both the receivable and the cash account. So the other way to work around that would be, we could consider now, and this is probably the way I would consider doing this, folks, is I would do a journal entry transaction, okay? So what I could do there, and honestly, you could do it a couple different ways. We could do journal entry, or we could do adjust asset. But I want the control that I want, so I'm going to do a journal entry transaction. So let's say he's now presented us with a payment in June that includes an interest amount on that, okay? So here under accounts, I would choose, say, Huntington Bank checking. So there's my Huntington Bank checking. Let's say he's presented us, paid $200 in principal with $20 of interest. So I'm going to make this $220 right here, because again, that's the amount that I'm depositing into my Huntington Bank checking. And then down here, I would choose my receivable asset. So I'm going to do my loan receivable 100, and I'm going to credit that, again, reducing it by $200. And then I'm also going to click the plus sign over here, and I'm going to choose my loan income account, and I'm going to credit that as $20 as well. Okay, so now my journal entry does have a balanced debit and credit. So now when I do my show running balance up here, oh, I've got to add it to my batch. There we go. We now show that the loan receivable has been reduced by $200. Okay, it's gone from $1,300 down to $1,100. My Huntington Bank checking now supports the $220 deposit that it will receive, and I've also recorded the $20 worth of loan interest that's now crediting to my general fund. Okay, the only other additional transactions, so basically what I'm doing by doing this way is I'm still doing 2 transactions to reflect the change that I need to do. The other one that I need to post now is I do need to do a $200 transaction from, or transfer from my loan fund back to my general fund for the amount that's being paid there. I could actually do it here as part of the journal entry too. So if I go up here to the top, I could do account and I could do loan fund. So there's in my loan receivable fund, debit 200, and here under my general fund, because right here then I click the plus sign, do my general fund balance 310, and I would credit that 200. Okay, so I've done this all through one giant journal entry essentially. Okay, but again, when I look at my show running balance window, it's your choice, folks. These are your books. Again, loan receivable asset shows an adjusted balance of $1,100. The fund loan receivable also shows the same $1,100 balance. But I've got my income recorded correctly. My general operating fund is now credited correctly. All of my accounts are being affected exactly the way that I want them. I can now safely post this journal entry. And this will reconcile perfectly on my Huntington Bank checking account. So you could do it, you know, in 3 transactions, 2 transactions, or in this case, I've done a repayment on everything through one large or giant journal entry. Okay, folks, this is yours to set up and construct any way you wish. But this running balance window is showing that this journal entry is doing exactly what we're wanting it to do for all accounts involved. So I could safely post this and we're good to go. So it is now 12:50, folks. So we're going to leave our topic for the day there.